Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 word and to the race reaction for the 2023 Japanese Grand Prix. Said it on Thursday, one of my favourite tracks on the calendar. Didn't disappoint again. I love seeing these cars around Suzuka. It's ridiculous how good they look. Great in qualifying, even in practice, for goodness sake. But yeah, pretty decent race today. I don't think many will disagree. It wasn't up to the thrilling conclusion that we saw in Singapore a week ago. Those final 10 laps were unreal, but that's going to happen when you've got four cars separated by 1.5 seconds at the front. But I still think a good race today. I wouldn't go as far as great, but I think it was good. I think we had some really good strategy, some good mix of strategy, lots of drama at the start and throughout. We saw quite a bit of overtaking actually today, and some controversy, I suppose, some moaning on team radio from some drivers. No great surprises there, you know what they're like, all 20 of them. But yeah, I enjoyed that. It was worth getting up for. That's what I'll say. It is just gone 9 o'clock here in the UK, so good morning to everyone in the UK. Good evening wherever you are. If you're staying up, by the way, I know somebody said they're up at, I think Sab Marinus has just said it's 3 a.m. in Texas, so I'll try not to keep you of the full 2 hours today. We'll make it a little bit shorter. I'll get through the field as quick as I can, and then we'll chill for 20 minutes or so, and then we'll wrap up. But we'll see how we go. You know what I'm like when I start talking, so we'll go. And apologies as well, by the way. No quali waffle yesterday because we went to meet a new member of the family, a new nephew. So I thought that took a bit of priority or precedent yesterday. So that's what we did. So apologies for that. But back to those, hopefully, from Qatar onwards. So he's only a week old, bless him, ever so cute. But anyway, let's get to the race. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Hope you are good today. Looks like quite a few people. Yeah. A few people up, 4 a.m. Madness, you crackers. But let's get on with it then. Let's start with Max Verstappen, who I guess that the rumours of his demise were greatly exaggerated after Singapore from a lot of people. Max Verstappen pretty much unstoppable from the first lap in FP1 all the way till the final lap in the race today. Phenomenal drive. 19.3 seconds clear of Lando Norris at the end, 36 clear of Piastri, a lap clear of Lawson, Tsunoda and Co behind. Comfortable victory. I've not got much in my notes because there was not really much point. At the start, got away, I'd say slightly, and we are talking slightly slower than the McLarens. They seem to be swamping him into turn one. I've written here hard but fair defence on Piastri to the inside, but actually having watched a replay back, I don't even think it was hard, to be honest. It was just a nice squeeze to keep that position. Held Lando Norris off, who was going around the outside. Thought he might pull a Verstappen 2022. Around the outside there, like he did on Leclerc last year, of course. Not quite. Pitted at the end of lap 16 for the first time. I always write the first stop down in my notes for a set of mediums. Did 2 stints on the mediums, 1 on the hards. And the most dramatic thing maybe for him was that he had a slightly slowish first stop at 3.3 seconds. slowish for Red Bull. It was one of those days for Max Verstappen today. It wasn't quite the perfect weekend because he didn't lead every lap, but as good as, really, didn't he? Just unbelievable, unstoppable. And I think the most important thing today, from his point of view, is that he is now very close to the World Championship. 400 points. His teammates nowhere near him. He can actually win the title in the Qatar Sprint, which I believe, not getting cocky or anything, I think I predicted that a couple of months ago that I thought Qatar Sprint or Qatar Race was where he would do it. So I thought it was Qatar. I need to say it properly. Qatar. It's not properly, is it? But Qatar weekend. It's not properly. I know my accent. I know. But that's pretty much where I was expecting him to do it. And he could do it in the sprint. A few people I think will be annoyed if it gets done on a Saturday. But as I said again, when I was talking about this a few months ago, in this situation, the championship's a foregone conclusion. It doesn't matter to me if he wins it on a Saturday, a Sunday, or the middle of a Wednesday afternoon. It doesn't matter. The title's done. It's different if it's a really close fight and it happens on a Saturday. That's a little bit more annoying because you prefer it to be done in the race, but it doesn't matter when it's a foregone conclusion. So that is done. But more importantly for Red Bull, the Constructors Championship, despite their second driver having a real fuster-cluck of a day, actually wrapped up the World Championship with what they needed. They needed to outscore Mercedes by 1 point and not be outscored by Ferrari by 24, and they pretty much comfortably did that. So that is Constructors title number 6, their second in a row. Anyone surprised? Anybody surprised that they've wrapped it up? Did anyone really think that this was going to go any other way other than a Red Bull Constructors Championship title? I don't think so. Utter domination. It's 15 wins for the season for the team. 13 for Max, 2 for Checo. Tons of pole positions, lots of podiums. just unstoppable. You're just not getting anywhere near them. And I suspect, not controversial statement alert at all, but I suspect they will be the overwhelming favourites going into next year as well. So it could be more close or closer next year, of course, because laws of diminishing returns, field closes up, things like that. But they will very much be the favourites. But just unbelievable season. And I think there's another possibility of this being the most dominant ever, don't they? Huge gap to their nearest rivals, and I don't know what to say. I can't. It's not that I don't want to talk about Red Bull and their championship success. Of course I do, but I've been talking about this for so many race reactions on the bounce now because it's just been coming and they've just been unstoppable. So huge congratulations to them. It's great to see. Going back to the Vettel days, loving Sebastian Vettel as I did, seeing those, 4 titles back to back. It's great to see Red Bull getting an opportunity to do it again. Maybe they'll do 4 in a row. We'll soon find out, of course, with the constructors in a couple of years' time. But I don't know what else to say. They're unstoppable is the phrase I keep using. Absolutely dominant, and it's thoroughly deserved. I don't care what the usual hashtags say on Twitter that have started trending already. The obvious ones. They deserve it. They've built the best car. It's not their fault that Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, Aston Martin, everybody else behind them couldn't build a car good enough to challenge. They've done the best job. They've got a driver on absolutely unbelievable form. Thoroughly deserved. So congratulations to them. That's the positives out of the way. Sergio Perez. Yeah. I wrote awful race is the phrase I've used, and I don't know how else to sum that up. So I'm going to read you all the notes I've got on Perez. There's quite a few. Contact with Hamilton at the start. I don't blame him for that. He kind of had to avoid Sainz, who was pulling out from behind Leclerc. That forced Hamilton onto the grass, a little bit of contact. Pitted for a new front wing under the first safety car and fitted the hard tyre. Was then investigated for a safety car infringement, which originally looked like it was for the pit exit where he passed 2 cars and appeared on the replays that only let 1 through. He may have let 2 through, I don't know for sure, but actually it was on pit entry where he overtook a Aston Martin before the first safety car line, which of course still constitutes overtaking under the safety car. So that was a 5-second time penalty. Then a late move on Magnussen at the hairpin. He locked up and hit Magnussen into a spin, got more front wing damage and another 5-second time penalty. Pitted for a new wing and served his first penalty. Awful first 12 laps is the notes I've got here. Then said on the radio, the car doesn't feel right. Not surprised, Sergio, you're running into everybody. And then at the end of lap 14, he retired. However, because this is just the way Formula One works from time to time, he was back out again quite a few laps later on lap 40 to serve his 5-second penalty. He was, I think, 26 laps down on the leader when he came out. Wanted to serve his penalty because there were question marks over whether or not the penalty could carry over to Qatar. Now, officially in the regulations, if the stewards choose to, they can carry that penalty over and convert it into a 3-place grid drop. I can't remember the last time we've seen that, because we've seen drivers before retire and not serve penalties and then nothing happens at the next race, but the stewards have the option to, and I think Red Bull would rather cover their backsides than take the risk of taking a 3-place grid drop, especially given, without sounding too harsh on this one, but I think the weekend he's had, he deserves it, given some of his qualifying performances this year. 3-place grid drop for Perez could be the difference between P8 and P God knows what. So P11, isn't it? I don't know what to say, God knows what, but it's another drop, isn't it? And he's further into the midfield. So I understand why they did it. They did check with the FIA. The FIA have cleared the decision. There's no funny business going on there. I think I saw Jonty chatting to somebody on Twitter as well, and I think their suggestion was maybe this is one of those situations where we'll let you do it this time, but come Tuesday that loophole's going to be closed to make sure that can't happen. But it's within the regulations. It makes sense. If I was in Red Bull's position or any team's position and I was concerned that they might convert that penalty because it's in the regulations for the next race and I could send the car out, I would do. But it feels cheeky. It's not a rule break or anything like that. It's the regulations allow it and all of that business, a loophole if you want to say that, or a grey area, whatever you want to use, but it's still cheeky. It's still very cheeky, but it's smart play as well. I'd do exactly the same. So I'm not going to criticise the team on that one, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that closed off, if not before Qatar, pretty soon, probably for next season. So I know a lot of people won't like it. It'll annoy them, but with respect, it's Sergio Perez, and, he's probably not going to be qualifying on pole position in Qatar, so does it really matter? But yeah, it's Platalobium says legal but unethical category. It's about unethical, but I like cheeky. It's a Sunday morning. We'll go with cheeky. We'll go with cheeky. I like that. But I get your point. I get your point completely. So, yeah, that was pretty much it for Sergio Perez today. Hardly anything happened for him, bless him. No, it was absolute. It's just not really good enough, is it? I know we keep talking about Perez and his qualifying lets him down. And if he doesn't qualify so poorly, he's not in all that mix with Hamilton. And, if he's qualifying on the front row where he should be in that car, you could argue, should be in that car, then he's not involved in that incident, so he doesn't get the damage, so he doesn't have the knock-on effect of then having to battle with Magnussen, which then is less contact. He's not getting penalties, he's not getting damage and pit stops and all of that. So it's on him. If he qualifies better, he avoids all of that. He didn't, and he got caught up in it. So I'm not going to defend him on that. It was just a very poor Sunday, and actually a poor Saturday as well for Perez. But other side of the garage, Verstappen, unstoppable again. Cruising. Absolutely cruising. We'll get the title in Qatar. I'm absolutely certain of that. And championship for Red Bull. Congratulations again to them. Absolutely brilliant. But I'm going to fly through the field. We'll come back to talk about Red Bull and that when we do some Q&A on a bit more waffle, because there's not enough waffle in these streams a little bit later on. But yeah, down at McLaren, Lando Norris, second place, ahead of teammate Oscar Piastri, which is mega. And I think the stat Crofty gave was something like that's their first double podium in F1 since 2014. But they didn't have a double podium in 2014, did they? Yes, they did, because that wasn't... Yeah, they did Honda 2015. Leave me alone. Sunday morning. Yeah, no, they did, didn't they? 2014 is the first double podium since 2014. Great drive from both the drivers. Just great. It's so good to see McLaren up there. I'm so glad I picked Norris for a podium on Thursday. I wasn't sure how they get on this weekend, but superb stuff. Norris did get the jump, as I say, on Piastri off the line and nearly got Verstappen into turn 1-2 around the outside, but Verstappen had the inside and just managed to hang on in there, but still took P2. Overtook Perez under the virtual safety car, but Red Bull was limping around with damage, and apparently if a car is going that slowly with severe damage, then you can overtake under the safety car. He was having a bit of a to and fro with his engineer about it over the radio because he wasn't sure what to do. Asked if he could pass. We didn't hear the decision on the live feed. However, we saw that he did get through, so I assume that was okay. Pitted end of lap 17 and was jumped by his teammate because his teammate got to pit under the virtual safety car. More on that in just a second. Russell was a threat, or as the engineer put it, only a threat if we abuse our tyres. Turns out Russell wasn't a threat. And there were some team orders at McLaren again. Lando Norris felt he was quicker. Watching it, he was quicker at that stage of the race, and said over the team radio, the longer I spend behind my teammate now, the worse what you're going to make the race for me. They decided to switch the cars. It made sense. I think Piastri was a little bit annoyed, or not annoyed, disappointed it wasn't second today, disappointed that the team made that call, but your teammate's quicker. You don't want to be jeopardising. I've seen something in chat. I'll come to it in a second. I've just realised where we've cocked up. Yeah, a few of you have pointed out. I will get to it in a second. Crofty wrong on a stat, basically. In fact, I'll cover it now. Monza 2021 was their last double podium, wasn't it? That's Crofty's fault. I didn't... Normally, when Crofty throws a stat out there, I double check it before a stream. I didn't today. I apologise. Of course, Daniel Ricciardo winning with a 1-2 with Norris second in Monza, didn't they? So thank you everyone in chat for pointing that out, and apologies that I didn't check that before we go live. I usually like to double check Crofty's stats because I think it was last weekend that he said that was Sainz's first win for Ferrari. So there you go. I apologise. Again. I've lost my train of thought on Norris, but ultimately to kind of put all that together for him, great drive, really impressive second half of the season from McLaren in general, and that's is that his fourth podium for Norris now. So he's climbed up the table. I think he's moved ahead of George Russell too. So he's looking good, Lando, this year. And I think somebody said in practice, I think it was, that it was, were McLaren the biggest threat to Red Bull next year? It's a little bit early to be saying that, but they're certainly moving in the right direction. So congratulations to them. Oscar Piastri as well. Massive congrats to him for his first podium in Formula One. It feels like it's been a long time coming for Oscar, doesn't it? With Lando getting that podium at Silverstone, for example, and then kind of going on this run, and Piastri's been in and around with the possibility of a podium. I know he technically got a podium with the or a top 3 finish in the sprint in Belgium, but he was sort of in and around that podium spot. And something always seemed to go wrong, a bit of damage, a bit of floor damage, or bad pit stop timing, or a bad safety car timing. So it's been coming, but I'm really, really pleased that he got that one. We've already talked about the launch off the line with Verstappen, lost out to his teammates through the pit stops, and then had to let him through as well. He did get an advantage in his first pit stop because the virtual safety car came out. But as I think it was Bernie Collins pointed out on the Sky coverage, because he was already in the pit lane when the virtual safety car came out, he didn't get to maximise that. So he gained a nice advantage, but not as much as if he was still out on track when the virtual safety car came out and then he pitted. So still an advantage, but most importantly, got the win. Really nice move, by the way, around the outside of George Russell at turn 1 on lap 12 for P3. Was at it won't be lap 12, it won't be about 40 something. I don't know when it was, but it was still a really nice move. First podium, big points, and I've got a feeling, looking at where Aston Martin are at the moment, and a good feeling, and I'm confident in saying this, that McLaren are going to end up P4 this season, because Qatar could be a good race for them, Kota as well. Brazil, you never know what's going to happen. They're not that far off. They've got a shot here. And I think we talked about it last week. Could they do it? And I think I'm feeling a bit more confident now they will do. So congratulations to McLaren, to Piastri, to everybody at Woking. I still can't get over the turnaround. Honestly, I still can't get over it. It's when you think of, I know it's a line that everyone's using, but I'm going to use it anyway and be the cliche. Why not? But when you look at where they were at the start of the season, the problems they were having, they were nowhere. It looked like it was going to be an awful season. I think I was talking at the time about maybe them not writing the season off, but focusing on the wind tunnel coming online and what they can do for 2024. And what a turnaround. Brilliant job from everybody there. I was going to do Zach Brown's accent then when he says race car or racing car, but I'm not going to. But they've got a great race car, as Zach Brown would say. So great stuff. Well done to McLaren there. Ferrari were our third team today. 4th place for Leclerc, 6th for Carlos Sainz. Lovely, brave move around the outside of George Russell at turn 1 and 2 and completed on the exit of turn 2 by Leclerc. He was noted for leaving the track and getting an advantage, but no investigation necessary. The offboard looked marginal, but it may well be one of those things where an overhead or something shows that the tyre is just, GPS as well shows that the tyre is just in contact with a white line. But it was close. But then, as we saw last weekend, they don't always get investigated or always get penalties. So, you know what the stewards are like. But I don't think it was such a good move. Let him have it. He was going to get through anyway. Managed to make that stick. Good position as well. P4 for Ferrari. I think that's a good result a really strong result for Leclerc, because I didn't think Ferrari would be that strong this weekend. They've got a great result. They're off the back of some really good results. Leclerc finishing behind his teammate the last 2 races. Bit frustrated at times. So to get that, to beat Sainz and to pick up some good points, I think he'll be very, very happy with that one. And Carlos Sainz was in P6, like I say. Engineer, Deg as expected. Between plan A and plan B was what he was told early on. So probably as soon as he heard that was terrified, and was probably right to be. Led briefly through the pit stops, pitted at the end of lap 18 for mediums. Really nice move as well around the outside of turn 12 and up the inside of Spoon on, I think it was Alonso. Passed by Russell into turn 1 at lap 50 for P6, despite Mercedes trying to do what Sainz and Norris did in Singapore, which gave me my favourite team radio of the day from Sainz. They're using my trick against me. So essentially, we'll talk about Mercedes in a minute, but Mercedes trying to arrange it so that they can use the DRS with the car between, I think it was Hamilton and Sainz, or at one point it was between Russell and Sainz, to try and keep him behind, and it didn't work. So bit of a waste of time that from Mercedes, but they tried it, and Sainz managed to get through anyway. So good result for him. But that's a weird one, isn't it, with Carlos Sainz, because that's going to feel like a bit of a disappointing race, because you've come off the back of a win and a couple of pole positions, and suddenly you're 6th place. It'll be frustrating. But he seemed a bit concerned over the radio, questioning strategy. Again, I know, surprise, about the undercut. I think they left it too long to respond to Lewis Hamilton, and he was concerned that the undercut was already done, and it was. So possibly, I mean, he was only 8 tenths behind in the end, so you could easily argue P5 was on the table today for Carlos Sainz, and he was kind of compromised there a bit with the undercut from Hamilton and Ferrari leaving it too late. So I can get his frustration there, absolutely can. But it's still good points for Ferrari, and they should be good for for third in the Constructors, unless McLaren keep this unbelievable run. You never know. Might start winning races soon. You never know, do you? So, anything on the top 3 teams? I've not got much in the Ferrari notes. If you've got anything you want to add, then let me know. We'll read some of your comments now, and then we'll move on to the rest of the field. Like I say, I want to get through the field quickly today because this is the bit that gets a little bit tedious for some people, as has been fed back to me. A lot of people telling me they prefer me to just sit and talk and waffle and end up where we end up with these reactions, but I like to go through the field, so we'll see. I've got a super chat, sorry, that's what I'm going to do, from Kim, who didn't leave a message. I've just spotted it in chat, though. Thank you very much, Kim, for your super chat, but didn't write a message and said, first time listening live, Finn living in Australia. Keep up the good work, Sean. Love the channel. Thank you so much, Kim, for your super chat, your lovely comment, your kind words, and your support as well. I really do appreciate that one, so thank you so much. You can get your own super chats in, of course, if you want to. I'll always come to chat. I always say it. I always come to chat. Some might argue too much, given some of the things I tend to read without reading first. Not always wise with you lot. Connor says Perez needs to go. Adam says, where do you think Norris will finish in the championship? Where is he now? He's just gone ahead of George Russell, hasn't he? So I'll have to get my... I always have a table up and I forgot to do it today, so I should just bear with me 2 secs while I get the driver standings up. Where do I think Norris will finish? He's P7 at the moment. I think he'll pick off a Ferrari. So I think best maybe P6. But if I'm being boring, I'll just say he'll finish where he is now, P7. But I think he's got a shot at P6. You know what Ferrari can be like from time to time. So, sorry, Ferrari fans. I'm a Ferrari fan. I'm allowed to say it. So, yeah, I think he's got a shot at a top 6, but I'll say 7th. I think he's finished 7th before, hasn't he, or there? Must be something in the water in North America. Perez, Stroll and Sargent all not pulling their weight, says Kim as well. Yeah, true. Will Checo finish behind Hamilton? No, I think Perez will hang on. I think he'll do enough between now and the end of the season with results-wise. The Mercedes is inconsistent at times, isn't it? One weekend they're really, really strong. Another weekend they're not. A bit like Perez, I suppose you could argue. But I think Perez will get enough podiums and enough second place between now and the end of the season to hang on to that. But only just. I think the gap will come down, but I think Perez will just about hang on. We'll talk about his future in Q&A and that a bit later, because that could be an interesting one. Field run-through assessment is okay with me. Thank you very much. I just like to say something on everybody. I like to say something on everybody. I think that's the right way to do it, but not everyone agrees, which is fine. Surprised I didn't say it was intimidating him, says Michael. Yeah, could have said that on his team radio. Stop inventing and all that one. Who's done more damage for their respective teams? Stroll with points or Logan with crash cost? Both are dragging the team down, says Warden. That's an interesting question. Actually, I want to come back to those two. Of course, I do. I think before we move on, I think Sargent is in a spot of bother now. I was fairly confident a month or so ago that he would just about do enough to keep that seat because of the noise is coming from Williams, but I think he might be in a spot of bother. Rick says, thank you so much for your super chat. Says Sean's morning voice noise, thumbs up. Love from Japan. Love Japan, sorry. Congrats on title on Honda's birthday. Thank you so much, Rick, for your super chat. Yeah, my morning voice is a bit more gravelly. I've been up since 4:45, so it shouldn't be as gravelly as my afternoon one, but it is for some reason. So I haven't had my coffee yet, which is stupid, but yeah. Let's roll on. Let's get on with the rest of the field then. Get this one done, and then we can do lots of Q&A and talk about driver speculation. And you can come back and say, Sean, you forgot that amazing move from Carlos Sainz on somebody that you need to be talking about. So we'll do that one. Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton, good start initially. Got off the line quite well. Looked like he was going to gain some places. And then, of course, had the incident with Sergio Perez. But again, I'm not going to go in hard on Perez for that one because Sainz sort of comes out to avoid Leclerc. Perez has then got to move over. It's one of those first corner, as Martin Brundle would say, or as AlphaTauri would say now, 3 into 1 doesn't go. And in that case, I think there were 4 because you had Leclerc, Sainz, Perez, and Hamilton. So I'm not going to put any blame on Perez there. That's just one of those unfortunate things. Hamilton couldn't have done anything either, really. He was already on the grass, so that's just not going to happen. Just unfortunate, which, of course, I think damaged Hamilton's car a little bit, but he was okay, managed to keep going. Had a little moment at Degner too as well, coming under attack from his teammate as a result. Was noted by the stewards for forcing his teammate off track at Spoon, which was one of those situations when I watch it back. If that's Hamilton on Perez or Hamilton on Ocon, for example, that's probably going to get investigated and may well be a penalty or a driving standards flag. usually when it's teammates there, they sort of let the team sort it out unless it results in proper big contact. But very scrappy not scrappy in a good way. They were scrapping each other between the two Mercedes early on and throughout the race, actually. But the stewards deemed no investigation necessary. Really nice move at the inside of 130R on Fernando Alonso. Always love an overtake at 130R. I don't care if it's not technically at 130R anymore, but it's still a great corner. Still great to see overtakes there. Not quite as exciting as around the outside as I think. Was it Leclerc or Magnussen on the other one? Magnussen or Leclerc went round the outside of the other one year. I can't remember what it was, but that was a great move as well. And of course, Alonso on Michael Schumacher, which I don't want to talk about too much, obviously. And then I think a couple of corners later at the inside of Ocon as well into turn 1. So good moves from him. Was told to give Russell DRS, as I said. He was let through. The team asked to swap the drivers over. Russell didn't really want to do it. He felt like they could wait till the last lap and maybe use him to give Hamilton DRS to keep Sainz at bay. But Hamilton was significantly quicker at that point because Russell was on much older tyres. So he wanted to swap him around. I agree with Mercedes in that instance. I really do. I think you've got to do that. They swapped them over. Hamilton was then asked to back up effectively and give Russell the DRS so that they could defend against Sainz. The defence lasted a lap, and Lewis Hamilton said over team radio, "We wasted all that time for no reason." And I've written here, fair point. I can't really argue with him on that one. You've told him to back up, cost yourself time. Really, with the benefit of a good hour's worth of hindsight now, of course. Maybe what they should have done is just told Russell to hold Sainz off as long as possible and let Hamilton bolt up the road just so he wasn't under quite so much pressure late on. He hung on for the points, so it doesn't really matter in the end, or the points, so it doesn't really matter in the end, but you get what I'm getting at. If Sainz pips Hamilton on the line for P5, then you're looking at that going, why didn't you just let him bolt? He was much quicker than Russell. Russell could have held him up a bit, and that would have been that, but didn't matter in the end. Obviously, Russell not too happy. I think he said afterwards that he felt that, or on team radio, he did say afterwards in the heat of the moment, it was said in team radio, but I think he was frustrated. He felt like he was pushed out early on and that the team should maybe he should be, I can't remember the phrase he used. He said something along the lines of, are we working as a team or are we fighting each other? And I think there was a frustration that he felt they weren't working as a team early on when he was squeezed out at Spoon, and now he's having to help his teammate out, and I think that's annoying. But the thing is, Hamilton was so much quicker. He probably would have passed Russell anyway, so there's no point wasting time in that situation. And it's the same if it's vice versa. It's exactly the same. You shouldn't be wasting time with your teammate if your teammate is so much slower on much older tyres. You can't do that. So it makes sense. I get his frustration. No teammate wants to move over for their teammate. Of course they don't, but it happens. So right call, I think. Nice move at the inside of Hamilton at the final chicane, by the way, on lap 5 from Russell. Hamilton came back and took the place into turn 1. Did try the move outside of Spoon. We talked about that one. So that was the quote. Who are we fighting here? Each other or the others. So there you go. Led briefly through the pit stops, but passed by Verstappen at the hairpin on lap 19. One of the longest, possibly the longest first stint on mediums to try and make a one-stopper work. Pitted eventually at the end of lap 24 to put the hards on, rejoin P9. So did well, actually, to come through to P7. But I think, again, with the benefit of hindsight, the one-stopper wasn't the right move today. The tyre deg was way too high. He was the only driver to try it. I believe, yes, he was. So he was the only driver to try it. It didn't work out. He was too slow at the end and couldn't really challenge. I'm just checking whether he was the longest first stint. He did 24 laps. Yes, he was the longest first stint on those mediums. So one stopper didn't work. It was worth a go. Let me know in chat if you disagree. I think it was worth a go. If you're Mercedes, you're probably not winning the race. There's a possibility if you can make it work, you might nick a P3 or a P4. I think it's worth a go, but again, we're talking with the benefit of hindsight here. It's the wrong call with that, but at the time you thought, well, it's worth a go. You've got to try it, and P7 would have been much further up than that anyway. With 2 stops, probably not. So I suppose worth the gamble, but just a frustrating day it seemed for him over the team radio. He does like to get quite heated, but as is it Bradley Lord? It's somebody Lord. The communications guy who's stepping in for Toto Wolff this weekend as one of the bosses at the team while Toto's away, kind of saying you've got to remember that, I'm paraphrasing here obviously, but got to remember that in the heat of battle, the heat of the moment, all that drama, all that adrenaline, things are said over the team radio that maybe wouldn't be said in a briefing when things have calmed down. So I know we get a lot of team radio and some people are like, oh, why are they moaning and why are they this, why that? But you've got to remember that in the heat of battle, things are going to get said that maybe aren't meant, and it's just frustration or adrenaline or whatever. So, but I would rather hear that from Russell and others who would get like that over team radio than, like Norris behind Piastri. I'd rather hear that than the PR lines we get in the pen afterwards. I'd much rather have that raw emotion than, oh yeah, well, you know, we've got to do this and we've got to do that and we'll work as a team, win together, lose together. I'd rather hear them being themselves, and that to me is part of F1. The passion. I want to see more passion. It's all too PR nowadays in F1. It's frustrating. I'm not going to rant. Way too early for that nonsense. But I get really fed up. It's why I like drivers like Kevin Magnussen, for example. I think, you know, he's not going to give you any BS. Fernando Alonso now, he has his PR moments, but he's always been a bit like that. But certainly now as he's got a bit older, he's kind of like, whatever. And he's just going to say it. And I like that. So that's just who I am, I guess. Fernando Alonso, P8 on the subject of Fernando. Lance Stroll, DNF. They are the next team, aren't they? Yeah, Aston Martin. Yeah, I mean, look, it comes back to what I said last week and every week for the last few weeks. I don't know what's going on there at the moment. I don't know if they've just been out-developed, if there's some kind of... There was a talk, wasn't there, about things that they were doing earlier in the season. They had to make changes because the FIA weren't happy. We'll not get into that today, but they're nowhere at the moment. Fernando Alonso, I'm not going to read pit stops, but just seemed to lack performance on the hard tyre initially versus those around him. He did say, you've thrown me to the lions, stopping. I'll read that again. You've thrown me to the lions, stopping me that early, mate. So he wasn't very happy over the radio. Was told to minimise curbs in the final chicane because Lance Stroll had a rear wing failure, according to Alonso's engineer, and so they had to pit him, check the car over, they retired him, and then of course Alonso, there's always that concern that's going to happen on the other car because it can sometimes be a batch issue, so it may well be there was some concern there. They told him to stay off the curbs, but he was complaining over team radio about a lack of straight line speed as well. So I think just one of those days where Aston just did not have the pace. Lance Stroll DNF, like I say, which was actually a bit of a shame because he was coming through quite nicely. He overtook Nico Hulkenberg for P13 on lap 18. Really nice move, actually, around the outside of turn 1. And he started quite a way down, didn't he, in 17th? So he's gaining places, so he's starting to come through, but it just didn't, the pace wasn't there. And Fernando Alonso has said in his post-race, just let me read this, because obviously we've got we'll have some more information on the rear wing, but Alonso said, really good race, or was a good race today. Mega start. Good use of the word mega. Moved up to 6th place, and the car felt good despite a lack of performance yesterday. Pitted a little earlier than those around us, and we struggled a bit once we switched to the hard tyre. So there you go, the hard tyre was the issue in that stint. On the second set of hards, though, we were quite competitive, so we were able to push and keep the Alpines behind at the end. Everyone is working flat out at the track and at the factory. And Lance Stroll, my race was ended by a rear wing failure today. Disappointed because I had a good start, making up 5 places on the opening lap, and a point or two would have been possible. That's racing sometimes. Very, very true. Mike Crack, if you don't find me on Twitter, by the way, I got the best email. I'm going to read you the header. I'll do it in a minute. We'll do this first. Mike Crack says, realistically, with the performance we had this weekend, we achieved the maximum possible result with Fernando this afternoon. There wasn't much we could have done out there. He brought some good, useful points for us. Lance raced well, made a good start past some cars and was on course for top 10, which is what they've said. Rear wing issue, that they chose to make a precautionary stop and had to retire the car. They'll obviously investigate that ahead of Qatar, but just that header, I think they know what they're doing. But I just got an email that said Mike Crack with the subject big in Japan. So all it was in my inbox was Mike Crack big in Japan. And it just, I'm 37 years old and I was practically crying with laughter on my sofa when I read that yesterday. Or on Friday, I was like, oh God, Sean, grow up. But yeah, no. Oh no, I've gone again. I apologise. I will mature. I will mature before Qatar, I promise. Not good enough. But yeah, so that's just a frustrating day for Aston Martin. But interesting to hear that the first set of hards didn't work for Alonso. The second set of hards did. So I'm like with technical stuff. I assume that's the track gripping up, the fuel coming down, all going to work towards those tyres. Maybe the track cooled a little bit as well, or was warmer, I don't know, whichever way you want it to go. But just track conditions seemed to turn, didn't they? So that worked in his favour. But he did fend off the Alpine, so decent job there for Alonso. Any answers later, let me know for what's going on with Aston Martin. I can't work it out. It could just be a bit of everything, to be honest. It could be that they have been outdeveloped. We know they have by McLaren. The car, maybe they did have to make some tweaks to try and make sure they got the FIA back on side or something, or maybe it's just the way it goes. Maybe the early season flattered them, with others maybe not being, well, certainly like McLaren, not on the pace. So, yeah, I mean, I did suspect earlier in the season it might happen, but it's a shame because it looks like if things continue the way they are and the way that McLaren are outscoring them, they're going to look fifth, which, given that first half of the season they had, fifth seems really, really disappointing. But it's a 22 race season this year. You know, you can't just be good for half a season and expect to cling on to third place in the constructors. You've got to be good and as consistent as you can be if your car isn't that good in the second half of the season. I think Alonso's doing a cracking job, actually, to be fair, at Aston Martin. And I imagine where first of all, imagine where they'd be if they had a driver who could score points consistently like him in the other car. But imagine where they'd be if they didn't have him. Imagine if he hadn't come back. Sebastian Vettel announced his retirement. Alonso says, no, I don't want to come here. And they're racing now with Stroll and somebody else. I mean, Alonso's done a great job this season. And that's coming from somebody who always saw Alonso as the bad guy. Not anymore. But he was the guy who stopped Michael Schumacher's run of championships, the swine. I love him now. I think he's great. He's yeah. No, anyway, let's not stop. Oh, dear. Pierre Gasly, P10, Esteban Ocon, P9. I've read them in that order for a very specific reason at Alpine. He was told to swap with Ocon at the end of the race. Now, I saw some of the Alpines, they were kind of involved in the midfield, and they were doing some overtaking. They were overtaken as well, and they were battling. They were quite close on track. So I assume what's happened here, correct me if I'm wrong, is that Alpine have swapped the cars over for a reason earlier in the race. Maybe I think Ocon undercuts Gasly. That could be why. And then at the end, Gasly was told to hand the position back to Ocon. So obviously at some point they've swapped positions again. Ocon was told to do that at the end and said on team radio he felt he was the faster driver all day and faster on fresher rubber and would have passed Ocon anyway, even without team orders. So obviously they have had a swap somewhere. And he said, I started in front and I was in front all race and you let him undercut me. So he's frustrated on radio, and I think he asked 2 or 3 times, are you joking? Are you serious? Is this a joke? So he's not happy they've had to swap them back over. I can't honestly say I'm quite happy. I'll go check Twitter now, see if they've put theirs. I don't get an email from Alpine. They don't like me for some reason. Probably because I'm not very nice to them. I don't talk about them enough. No, I don't get emails from them, so let's go check their Twitter. But I assume there's been a swap at some point where Ocon's been allowed to go through, or Gasly's been allowed to go through, and then they want to swap them back, which sort of makes sense, I guess. So we've seen it before, haven't we? But my argument to that is if Gasly would have been quicker anyway, then maybe Gasly should have just made the move. So, yeah, nothing on their Twitter or anything at the moment. So, just a recap of their result. But, yeah, let me know if you know that one, because I don't recall seeing too much of that or hearing much on that one. So, we might come back to that. I'll see if I can find some kind of press release. They haven't even got a website that takes me to the right place. So, yeah, but just frustration for Gasly. But it's 3 points. It's decent for Alpine. I mean, they're not going to challenge Aston Martin. They're not going to challenge McLaren realistically, I don't think. I will double check the constructors, make sure that they're not a point behind Aston Martin or something like that. But I don't think they're going to be challenging any higher up. I think they are where they're going to finish. Yeah, 84 points. They're well clear of Williams on 21, well behind McLaren on 172. So Alpine are probably where they're going to finish in P6. It's 3 points. It's some nice points. There's no point falling out over that. So, you know, when you look at the Ocon Gasly situation, the frustration Gasly's got, I understand it, but the drivers' championship positions are nice for the drivers, obviously, but if you're not winning the championship, it doesn't mean anything, really. In the constructors, it means money. So 3 points for the team. It doesn't matter if it's Ocon 9th and Gasly 10th or the other way around. So I kind of feel like just do as you're told. But I get the frustration as a racing driver that you don't want to be letting your teammate through, as I said earlier. So, yeah. Max says, keeping Ocon and Gasly away from each other is the team order, and they got that wrong. The Zero Line says we need Kobayashi in the race. Oh, Kobayashi. Has that hairpin ever been renamed to the Kobayashi hairpin? Because it should be. Morning Red Raven, just waking up with a yawn there. Good to see you, mate. I think Gasly would have overtaken Ocon anyway, says Adam Osborne. And I think that was it on the Alpines. Alpine did a lot better than I expected. Williams did a lot worse, says Platalobium. Yeah. We'll get to Williams in a bit. I tend to agree. Before we move on, by the way, please do drop a like on the stream. That would be appreciated. 383 of you here, so thank you very much for getting up or staying up to watch this one. Please drop a like. Let's get well over 100. That'd be great. And don't forget to subscribe as well. There'll hopefully be content this week. And then, of course, we've got Qatar. And then after another week off, I think it's chaos at the end of the season. It's a triple header, a week off, and a double header. So lots to come in the coming weeks. So please do subscribe. Don't forget you can put your super chats in as well. You can support the channel through Patreon, PayPal as well if you would like. I'll always keep an eye on that, make sure. And if you do, by the way, send anything on PayPal. Not everyone does, and not everyone has to. Of course they don't. But if you ever do, please do put a message. Not everyone does, so it'd be good to read something out, even just a wave. So, yeah, thank you very much for your support, as always. Just one more comment in the chat I want to come back to, which I saw somebody saying it's gone. Max says it means money for the drivers in the drive. Yeah, I guess it does, because I suppose it's bonuses, isn't it? The team might pay X amount if you finish in this position in the championship or whatever, but officially they don't get anything from the FIA. You know, if Perez finishes third, he doesn't get any more or any less for finishing there, except for from the team. So it does mean money in that respect. So I suppose you're right. So it's a good point just to make out. But it's the constructors where the FIA pay their money out, if that makes sense. So you get what I mean. You get what I mean. AlphaTauri. Look, what can I say? All right, I'm not. I'll probably go off on this at some point today. But what can I say? Liam Lawson P11. Yuki Tsunoda P12. If we count Monza, which is really unfair because although you might not want to count Singapore because of the contact with Perez, but Tsunoda had his own part in that, so I'm not having that one. But Monza, he didn't even start the race because of a technical issue, so I'll take that away. It's 3-0 on a Sunday between Lawson and Tsunoda. 4-0 officially because people do count Monza, but as far as I'm concerned, it's 3-0, so not bad. Not bad for a driver who's not got a race seat next season, is it? You hear the bitterness and the saltiness in my voice at that point. But yes, Liam Lawson, Yuki Tsunoda. Can I just say, whilst I appreciate people will have enjoyed the intra-team battle at Mercedes, I'll understand people have enjoyed the McLaren one. Probably one of my favourite moments of the race was that first just over half a lap between Tsunoda and Lawson. I need to go away after this and find the onboards and watch them because both drivers were exceptional in that fight. That could have quite easily ended in a big bit of contact, big collision, and big trouble for both drivers. That could have easily been, but absolutely superb driving from both of them side by side for, I think, pretty much from turn 1 or 2 all the way through Spoon. They were running each other wide. They were close to banging wheels. It looked so much fun. And I love seeing that between teammates because that shows both of them have got decent racecraft as well against each other. Whether that be the same against a driver in another car, we'll wait and see. But yeah, absolutely thoroughly enjoyed that. So thank you, Yuki. Thank you, Liam, for a really exciting first half a lap between you two. And Liam Lawson came out on top in that fight as well. Just saying. All hard but fair is what I've written there. He did pit a lap after his teammate did Lawson. And was effectively undercut. He was undercut by Tsunoda, but eventually got back through because I think he got to pit first the second time. So I think that allowed him to undercut Tsunoda. So as far as I'm concerned, that's completely fair. Both drivers got the chance and they both took it. It's a great fight between them. Pitted end of lap 9 did Yuki to get rid of the softs and switch to the mediums. Undercut Lawson, like I say, having pitted 5 laps. Pitted 5 laps after Lawson the second time, which allowed Lawson to undercut him and got close at the end. I think he wanted to go through. I think that was there was a radio from Soda, which I think was something along the lines of this is ridiculous or whatever, losing time. I think he wanted them to swap positions, but the reality is Lawson was 21 seconds behind Gasly in P10 and Tsunoda was only 8 tenths behind Lawson, so it's not like they'd be fighting for a point today. So they needed a DNF from a couple of cars ahead to get a double points finish, but 11th and 12th by both drivers actually is a really good result. And I think Tsunoda needed that a little bit as well, given the last few races for him. So it's not points, and I'll get his frustration there, and he'll be disappointed to lose to his teammate on Sunday, but it's a good result for AlphaTauri, so well done to both of those. As for the decision by... I'll do it now. As for the decision by AlphaTauri and Red Bull to go with Tsunoda and Ricciardo, earlier in the week when the rumour came out that that's what they were doing, I put quite a rant on Discord. If you're over there, you'll know I did. I then took a couple of days to relax and think about it properly. And so how can I word this? So I don't think the decision was a decision for the benefit of AlphaTauri. I think the decision to stick with Tsunoda and keep Ricciardo alongside him for next year is a Red Bull decision, obviously, but for the Red Bull racing team. I think this is about 2025. I don't think this is about next season. I think this is about, well, it is. You put Ricciardo and you put Tsunoda in the car together. You see how they do. If Perez doesn't step it up, then you've got two options, because the most likely options for Red Bull in 2025 are keep Perez, take Tsunoda, or take Ricciardo as Max's teammate. They are the three most likely options. So it makes sense to have all three of them on the grid next year so you can assess them and then assess Tsunoda versus Ricciardo. So I think it's a Red Bull decision. I think if that's a decision just by AlphaTauri or for AlphaTauri or with the junior program in mind, Lawson gets one of those seats. But I think this is about 2025 and making sure they've got the options if Perez does not step it up next year. So that's my read of the situation. I may be wrong. I said that on Discord on Wednesday that's how I read it now. I may be completely wrong, but that's just a gut feeling. I also, if I'm being honest, I also have a gut feeling that, and it is only a gut feeling, so take this with a lot of salt, but I suspect the decision may have already been taken that Sergio won't be there in 25. I think he'll be there next year. Christian Horner is definitely fighting his corner on that one, so I think he will stay for next year. But I think the decision's already been taken that he won't be there in 25. Again, that is only a gut feeling. I have nothing to go off other than some of the noises being made, the fact that they seem to be gearing, certainly Ricciardo, towards coming back to Red Bull. It feels like unless Sergio Perez has an epic year next year, he's probably going to be gone in 25, which some of you would say he probably deserves to be. Some would argue he might deserve to be this year, but I think they'll give him next year and then replace him in 25. And I think that's what the decision is about. I do also want to clarify as well. A few people got a bit sharp on Twitter with a few people I follow who were saying things about how, this is supposed to be a junior team, AlphaTauri, blah, blah, blah. And they got quite snippy about it and saying that the media and content creators don't know what they're talking about. AlphaTauri haven't been a junior team for years. Whilst AlphaTauri are not the junior team that they were 5 years ago in the same way, Christian Horner said in Singapore, referred to AlphaTauri as the Red Bull junior team. Helmut Marko across the same weekend, or before the same weekend, referred to AlphaTauri as the Red Bull junior team. And Yuki Tsunoda in the press conference on Thursday referred to the team as the Red Bull junior team. So with all due respect to the self-proclaimed experts on Twitter, I'm going to take the words of Christian Horner, Helmut Marko, and a driver who actually drives for the team over you guys. So just to make that point, if they're still calling it a junior team, as far as I'm concerned, it's still a junior team, but I accept it is not the same as it was when it was Toro Rosso, for example. So again, I think the decision was about 25 and not next season, because Lawson might find himself in a Williams yet. We'll get to that in a bit, but I think I'd be very surprised if he's not in one of those seats for 2025, Lawson, in an AlphaTauri seat. Because you have to remember as well, very quickly, I will get back to the run-through, I promise, but very quickly on this, you have to remember there's no point putting Lawson in that car next year if you're looking at 2025 for the Red Bull seat. There's no point Lawson against Tsunoda or Lawson against Ricciardo, because you don't want to end up in the same position you were with Gasly and Albon, where you've rushed them through too quickly and then they go, they had a great season, let's throw them in the Red Bull, and it all goes wrong. It's better that they assess Ricciardo and Tsunoda and then, of course, Perez at Red Bull next year, make a decision, and then put Lawson in that AlphaTauri or whatever it's going to be called and give him a couple of seasons, maybe 3 seasons in that car before you promote him. So that's my read of that. So I honestly, hold my hands up, disappointed that Lawson didn't get an opportunity for next season. But when I look at the bigger picture for Red Bull, it makes a lot of sense to me, and I can understand why they've made that decision. I think he's shown in his 4 races, and it sounds like he's getting Qatar, by the way. It sounds like Ricciardo won't be back till Kota, so it looks like we've got Lawson again for Qatar, but no official confirmation on that. But in those 4 races, he's shown to me that he is good enough to be given a chance in Formula One full-time, and I think that will be in 25 once Red Bull know what they do with the main team. Also, Tsunoda might move on at the end of 24 to go to Aston Martin, for example. So that's my read of it. Disappointed for Lawson. I can understand his frustration, but I don't actually necessarily think a reserve role at Red Bull's a bad role. I think he might get a chance in some FP1s. I know he's not a rookie, but he might get a shot in some FP1 sessions. He'll do lots of simulator work. He can embed himself in a bit of the team, and that will help him. So that's kind of how I feel about that. But he may well yet be on the grid. We will get to that a little bit later on. So that I just wanted to talk about that very, very briefly. And it wasn't briefly at all, was it? It went on for way too long. So we will roll on to Alfa Romeo. Zhou Guanyu, P13, Valtteri Bottas, DNF. Scruffy day for both of them, but not necessarily their fault. Bottas was squeezed by an Alpine who moved to the left. He then hit Albon, or was hit by Albon, whose car lifted. Damage. To quote Bottas, WTF. I won't use the words, but he did say it. And then Sargent locked up and hit Bottas, who was on the outside, and left the fin in a spin. I think he was in the grass as well, wasn't he, at turn? Yes, he was at the hairpin. On lap 5 was in the spin. Went down to the pits, pitted for checks and repairs. Long stop, I think Ted said in commentary, more than 40 seconds. Then went back out and said it was undrivable. Box, pitted and retired at the end of lap 8. So Valtteri Bottas, very much wrong place, wrong time on the run to turn 1. Squeezed by an Alpine. Had a kind of a bit like I was saying about Leclerc, Sainz and Hamilton and Perez, in that it's sort of not a concertina, but kind of a knock-on effect of so many cars going out to turn 1. One comes left, another one's got to move left. If you then got another car there's going to be contact. So it was just a very scruffy. The stewards took no action. I think, to me, a lot of it was first lap incident. It's very easy to say that was such and such's fault, but I think in that situation, 3 or 4 cars wide into turn 1, stuff's going to happen. So just unfortunate for Valtteri Bottas there. Zhou Guanyu, I think he said in his, I tried to listen before we went live, I think he said in his post-race social media thing that he got debris from the incident, possibly from Bottas's car, ironically, and that compromised him, but decent pace overall, I think he said, once he got back out there. Did say the rear on the soft tyre wasn't great at one stage, but just a disappointing day for Alfa Romeo overall. I feel like I say, wrong place, wrong time a bit for Bottas, and one of those first lap incidents, and then Zhou, unfortunately, if that is the case, picking up debris from his teammate, and then struggling again. So I'm just going to check socials, because I've got notes on Alfa Romeo, but that is basically it, all of that first lap stuff. So I will see if they've put anything out yet. They haven't sent me an email with the press release in, which is a shame, because they're usually quite swift with that one. I can't play the video because obviously copyright, you know what F1 are like, can't even try it. But yeah, I'll keep an eye out for the press release again, see if we can get some, mainly from Zhou. There's not really much point going on what Bottas has said anymore, because we saw what happened, and his interviews were on the live as well. So just a shame for Bottas. I don't know if the pace was there for points today. Looking at Zhou, what was he? Well, I'll say that 3 stops, 2.3 seconds off Tsunoda. So he made 3 stops, obviously for repairs and things. 23 laps on the hard, so he wasn't on particularly fresh hards, but maybe without the contact, maybe probably would have been looking at P11. Looking at that, 2.2 off Zhou, off Tsunoda. 0.8 off. Yeah, so probably P11 today was the best Zhou could have got without that contact. We'll never know, of course. Things can change in races like that. So just a shame for them. Haas were there. Bless them. I never know what to say about Haas. Magnussen was hit by locking up Sergio Perez, as I've already been over, at the hairpin on lap 12, and that put him in a spin. I think he was suffering with understeer, because his engineer gave him some ideas over the radio on things he can do on the steering wheel and moving things around to try and help with the understeer he was suffering with. So obviously the damage probably causing that, although the Haas is quite a bit of a shitbox on a Sunday anyway, isn't it? So maybe that's part of the reason why. But yeah, understeer probably for Magnussen as well, but not his fault at all. In fact, Magnussen's quotes are out. He says, I got hit on the rear tyre. It was a pretty desperate move. It was very late, but it is what it is. I got spun around, and then we had to pit. That was too early for the 2-stop strategy with the tyre degradation that we have on our car. Good point on the tyre deg, yeah. I've missed that one off, so damn, yeah. And Hulkenberg says, I think I stayed out of the messy part of the start, as on the left, 2 cars ahead of me, there was contact. He got a front row seat, basically, didn't he? Managed to capitalise from that on the inside line and took 3 or 4 cars, which was nice and rewarding. And Gunther Steiner says, it was a tough race, I'd say, but the positive is the team did the best they could with what we've got. We got close to fighting our opponents. We were on a different strategy with Nico, and it almost worked out. What did Hulkenberg done his strategy? 3 stops. So he finished ahead of Magnussen. So pretty decent there for him. So yeah, just sounds like another. I mean, shall I just record this and just replay it every race reaction? Haas had okay pace on Saturday and the tyres weren't really going their way on the Sunday and they fell back through the field. There you go. That's your review of Haas's season. Pretty decent on a Saturday, or okay on a Saturday, and then on a Sunday, tyres fall away and they disappear. So it's kind of it. Obviously, Magnus is not helped by Sergio Perez's locking up move into the hairpin. I mean, I get he's in a faster car and he wants to get through the field, but you've still got to be careful. I mean, that's I feel for Magnus in that situation. Not a lot he can do. But there you go. That's Haas's day. Not great. Williams, final team for today. I mean, what do you want me to say? Alex Albon, floor damage. There will be a picture in a bit that I've zoomed in on, so it might be a bit grainy, but that I've zoomed in on the first lap incident. We've kind of been through that. He was, load of squeezing going on in that middle of the pack, and then Albon kind of got hit, and he went a little bit airborne, came down with quite a hit. Floor damage, pitted under the first safety car for some repairs. I think it was Bottas that hit him, actually, wasn't it? Yeah, squeezed by the Alpine. And then at one stage says it's literally undrivable, which technically wasn't because he was driving it, but let's not get into that. It's literally undrivable. And then says, sacrifice my race for whatever we need to do, which was interesting, and retired on the end of lap 27. So obviously trying to do some stuff. I will read you. I did read this before I went live, but I've completely forgotten what I said now. So, no, the first line's a great line. No car is strong enough to survive those kinds of crashes. Bad start kind of triggered it, so we need to work on that. So he's admitting there's a bad start there from his side. Wrong position at the wrong time and he got squeezed. Damage on lap 1 and it was pretty much game over, so it's a shame. We tried to push on and see if the race would unfold and see what would happen, so maybe waiting for some retirements, a safety car that might bring them into play for a point if there's a bit more chaos or something, but I think with the damage, that's unlikely. And then just said ultimately needed to retire the car. Logan Sargent says a hectic first few laps for sure. Yeah, came out of the pit lane to a lot of debris on the track, being worried about getting a puncture from my side on the incident. So this is the incident with Bottas. Yeah, he was the one that hit Bottas, wasn't he? Locked up into the hairpin. He said he locked up, cold tyres, went into Bottas. He's taken the blame, 100% taken the blame, so fair play. Said, although he did say Bottas must not have seen that I was locking up before he made the move. So Bottas made the move on the outside, Sargent locked up and then hit him. But I don't think, whilst I can understand people might argue that drivers need to be alert to everything around them, it's not really up to Bottas to keep an eye on you locking up. It's up to you to not lock up and not hit the driver. So I wouldn't put that. I'm not saying he is putting out Bottas's door, but I said he wouldn't do that. Had to retire the car following the contact. He said, interesting, it's disappointing for a track where we had a car in a good window, especially in qualifying, where he crashed heavily at the final corner. Anyway, yeah, so I've got the notes here for him. It was pretty much what he said. 10-second time penalty at the start. Anyway, I had to start from the pit lane because qualifying crash at the final corner. They had to rebuild the car, and they rebuilt the car so extensively that they put a chassis together that was more than like the survival cell and everything they were allowed to change. And it was effectively, he had a third car. That was effectively giving him a third car for the weekend, which isn't allowed. So he got a 10-second time penalty and had to start from the pit lane. So I mean, his race was pretty much destroyed anyway. He then didn't go on to help himself in any way, shape or form. Lots of minute Bottas, like I say. Pitted for repairs, 5-second penalty for that one. Absolutely correct call. Retired end of lap 24. A really shockingly bad race. Albon, very much unfortunate. Wrong place, wrong time. Sargent, just not good enough. Not all weekend. He wasn't too bad in practice for him. But he was pretty bad yesterday with the crash. And then obviously, shockingly bad race as well. Not helped by the situation on Saturday. And it's disappointing because I thought Williams had a shot at being best of the rest this weekend. I thought they'd be good, and they looked okay, but it's one of those things on a Sunday. I'm not going to go in on Albon. He's been superb this season. Like I say, wrong place, wrong time. But Logan Sargent, I mean, like I said earlier, I said probably even as recently as last week that I thought he could still turn this around, and that the noises from the team seemed to be they wanted to keep him. In fact, on Monday, when the Sonoda and Ricardo news was starting to circulate, the rumours from a lot of very, very, very reliable journalists in the F1 world, your Chris Medlands, etc., for example, were talking about Sargent probably staying, and it was looking like Sargent was staying. I don't know if one weekend is going to change that, but this isn't one weekend. This is another weekend where he's had a bit of a shocker. And yeah, okay, he got a twitch in that final corner. The car wasn't totally stable in the last corner, and he lost it in qualifying. But Alex Albon said he was having the same issues, and Albon knew to handle that, and Sargent didn't, and that's why he crashed. So I think he might be in a bit of trouble now, because there comes a point where, you know, I've talked about, and it's not so much from the fans side of things, but from the brands in America, the fact that Dorilton Capital, I believe, are US based as well. He's great to have on board from a marketing point of view for brands and Dorilton because of the 3 races in the US. But there comes a point, I feel like I said this about somebody recently. It might have even been Mick Schumacher, but I don't know. It was Latifi. It was Latifi. There comes a point where that money and that marketing and what you make from that is great. But if you're having to spend all that on repairing the car, what's the point? You may as well put somebody in there who's not going to crash the car every weekend. Or what feels like every weekend at the moment. I have no doubt Sargent is a good driver, because you've got my line, one of my favourite lines. Whatever you think of drivers, pay drivers, whatever. I'm not saying Sargent is, but pay drivers or whatever. You've got to have pedigree to make Formula One in the first place. Whether you buy a seat, Lance Stroll is a great example of that. He had a good junior career. Some would say a very good junior career. Yes, he bought his seat at Williams, but you've got to have the pedigree to be in that. But you've got to get a super license. You've got to be able to race as well as have the money. So he's a good driver, but I'm not convinced that this is going to turn around this season. And if you're Williams, they'll get away with it this year in the Constructors, because I don't see Haas picking up enough points to overturn what they're doing. I think Albon will score points between now and the end of the season. But in a closer fight, Sargent could cost you quite a few $1 million in a Constructors Championship battle with Haas next season, or an Alfa Romeo next season, or whatever. So I think they're going to have to make a decision. Sat here today, I still think they might stick with him. But if I'm going to drop my bias for a minute, but if I am James Vowles, I'm at least on the phone to Red Bull and saying, hey, I don't suppose Liam Lawson's available for loan. Not necessarily commit to anything, and just sort of start to put the feelers out. Maybe ring Mercedes. A lot of people will say this one as well. Ring Mercedes. Is Mick available next year for a loan? That sort of thing. I'm not saying that they would necessarily absolutely be better than Sargent. You don't know, do we? You never know what's going to happen until they're in that car. But that's what I do. And I know that I'm biased towards Lawson, but I'm just trying to put that to one side and look at this from James Vowles' position. Also, I don't think Sargent was a Vowles pick, was he? Wasn't he picked by... Oh, I've forgotten his name. The former team principal. Really nice guy. Jos Capito. I think it was his pick, and then he left, and then James Vowles came in. I might be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. But maybe that'll play a part. But I'd at least be making a call to Red Bull and to Mercedes. He was he? Thank you, Max. Thank you very much. That's what I would do. But yeah, I'm aware I'm biased on that, so I'm going to come to you in chat. Before we do driver of the day. Yeah, tell me what you think. If you are, do you know what? Congratulations, you are now James Vowles for 3 minutes. You James Vowles. What an opportunity. Well done. You're having a great season. What a job you've done at Williams. Congrats. What are you doing for next? Are you giving Sargent that opportunity for one more year and see if he can turn it around? Or are you on the phone to Red Bull to see if Lawson's available, who's had a great opening 4 races? And is obviously 4 races doesn't tell you the whole story. Never know what's going to happen. He might not be great. He might do 24 races next year and be crap in 20 of them, but I don't think he will be. But 4 great races. Are you calling Mercedes and asking about Mick Schumacher? Are you looking at Felipe Drugovich from Aston Martin, seeing if you can loan him? Are you looking at somebody in F2, maybe a Frederic Vesti from Mercedes, maybe give him an opportunity, or Théo Pourchaire if he's not going to get the chance at Aston Martin? Just what are your thoughts? What are you thinking? What would you do if you were James Vowles in that situation? I obviously would lean towards Lawson because of what we've seen in the last 4 races, but I think there's merit in a lot of the names I've thrown in there, giving them an opportunity, and they've shown before, Williams, they're open to loaning drivers. They did it with Russell for a long time, so yeah, let's see what you're saying. Let's have a look. Surely I pick Mick over Logan if Liam isn't available, says CPB1. I got your name right. Oh, it's early Sunday morning. I got your neighbour. It's not early. It's gone 10 o'clock, Sean. Look. I'm a content creator. It's basically being a student. That's early for me. 10 past 10. But I got it right. Impressive. Maybe this is the answer. Pato O'Ward in Sergeant Out says class. Another one in there, I suppose. Alex Pelot. Some people might say. Lawson 100% says wicked, wild, and wise. I got that right as well. Goodness me. Lone Lawson make Logan a reserve test driver says Warden. Yeah. Good shout. The one and only says, hi, Drugovich, supposedly better in a sim than Stroll and a pretty dead end at Aston Martin. Do you know what, actually, the one and only? That's how I feel about Drugovich. The dead end thing. Because the talk is that they're going to go for Yuki Tsunoda once the Honda ties come in a bit more tightly in the near future. Obviously, the deal's done, but you know what I mean? When Honda starts to get involved, apparently he's on their radar, so that doesn't look great for Drugovich. But then Alonso's not going to be around forever, is he? So maybe Tsunoda and Drugovich, that might sound a bit chaotic, maybe. For Honda, they might want some experience in there, or inexperience rather than chaotic. But yeah, Henry says Vesti, probably. Yeah. I'll make that decision after race 23 of 23. Listen around to who's available, says Red Raven. I take one issue with your statement, Red Raven, because it wouldn't be our conversation without it. Officially, there are 23 rounds this season, but we don't only have 22 races, so that I'm being really pedantic. I totally get what you're saying. I'm just being a bit of a dick, but there you go. Yeah. Tsunoda and Drugovich will be amazing, says Random, and let's do one more. Or a couple more, actually. James Rich says, here's one for you. Vettel ? Don't tease me, James. Don't tease me. Sorry. Don't tease me, James Rich. Full name only for you. And some guy said Lawson as well. That's his name, not just some guy. Replace Stroll with Lawson, says John of all trades. And Stefan says, what have I missed? Why would Lawson not be obvious number one pick for the Williams seat? I think for me, the reason it's not obvious is because the fact that Red Bull have already kind of come out and said he is our reserve next year. That's the role he's having. Christian Horner has kind of almost distanced the talk of Lawson to Williams by saying, you know, there's only one seat available. Doesn't look like he's on the grid next year, so we're going to go with keep him on as reserve. But that doesn't mean that won't change. All it takes is one phone call from James Vowles to say, hey, Christian, is he available? And Christian Horner goes, yes. Because they would prefer him to be on the grid next year, I'm sure. But like I said earlier, they're focused on 25 and what they change there. Thank you, by the way, to Stefan for your super chat once again, mate. Thank you so much. It says, courtesy of a Piastri podium. Don't gamble, kids. Hope you're doing well, Sean. Piastri's driver of the day for me. No bias as an Aussie at all. Yeah, right. Finally, we have a world champion. Thank you so much, mate, for your super chat, for your support, and for the chat the other day as well in Discord DMs. It was good to hear from you again, mates. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that continued support from you as always. So thank you. CPB wants us, if Vettel ever comes back to a full-time seat, it'll be Audi 100%. Audi, AUDI. Williams is AlphaTauri for AlphaTauri drivers, says Random. Maybe that's what they do. Maybe they do a naming right. So Williams become Williams AlphaTauri, and then AlphaTauri go back to Toro Rosso. So you've got Red Bull, Bull Red, Williams AlphaTauri. There you go. Sorted. Main team, junior team, junior team. Maybe. Driver of the day. Let's move on to driver of the day. One surname in chat. Who are you going for? Officially, it was Oscar Piastri. I suspect that's probably the way the chat is going to go. I might be wrong. But yeah, officially Oscar Piastri. It's, for me, I'd be inclined to agree. But Verstappen was faultless all weekend. From that very... All that talk after Singapore, all the alleged controversy, which there wasn't, as I'm sure we're all shocked about. Not. It's social media. I need to stay off social media really in terms of Twitter and things. I need to, because the things you read on there are so funny and so pathetic. But he bounced back immediately in that first lap, drove brilliantly all weekend. So maybe Verstappen for driver of the weekend. Because he was faultless, but it's hard not to go Piastri. But then at the same time, Norris was excellent as well, and did finish 17 seconds up the road from his teammates. So, team of the day, McLaren. Driver of the weekend, Verstappen. But because it's his first podium, I'm going to go Piastri because it's been coming. But honestly, if you're listening later, don't get annoyed at that, or you're listening now, don't get annoyed at that. First of all, it really doesn't matter, and it's not worth getting wound up about. I often get it. But there were some great drives today. Verstappen superb, Norris superb, Piastri superb. I think Leclerc was really strong as well. I think Hamilton did a good job in a Mercedes that wasn't great today. I think Alonso actually finishing 8th is a better result than it looks. So I think credit to him for that one. Lawson was excellent as well to finish ahead of Tsunoda. In fact, I could give it to either of those drivers just for that first lap battle. Absolutely fantastic. And Perez was incredible as well. Without Perez, we'd have had lots of finishers. So, you know, he gave us something, but I'm not serious on that one. So, yeah, I'll go Piastri his first podium, but just, again, with the usual caveat that there are a lot of drivers that could be a shout, and Verstappen gets my driver of the weekend overall because he was just absolutely faultless, and McLaren superb as well. So, let's see what he's saying in chat. I'll read some of these out then. Vesk says Lewis. Like that feels like a left field pick. That's what, when I said it, I felt like a left field pick, but actually P5 in that Mercedes, not a bad result at all. Stefan says Piastri. Michael says Piastri. It'll be easier if I just do this. Khalifa, Platolobium, say Piastri. William says Piastri as well. Verstappen for Dory Skog. I have to be careful with that one. Del says Sargent. Lol. Max for MSC. Ericsson says some guy said. Gotta be Norris for John of all trades. Piastri driver of the day for unbiased Aussie Mike. Perez got 2 races in. That's a good point. C64. Perez raced twice today, retired twice as well. That's quite a feat. Random says Piastri. Justin and Lars chat say Max. Steven says Norris. Warden says Max for the win, but McLaren drivers were neck and neck. Max says yes. I don't know if he's talking to me or to other people, but I'll say it anyway. Yinka says Piastri. Henry says Lando was only 3/10 off Max on medium pace. Is that true? That's interesting. Miles ahead of his teammate. Max didn't lead all laps, so clearly is washed. I think that's a lol. The smiley face says. That's a good point on Norris. I'm like, yeah. Is that... Yeah. If that's true, that he's only 3/10 off Max on medium pace, then actually I might switch to Norris. But I feel like I could just say McLaren, really. The one and only says Verstappen, most cars drove to where the car should be, and Verstappen was perfect all weekend. That's a fair point as well, actually. Steph says Piastri. Wicked Wild and Wise says, yep, 100% Max. The guy that was 19.4 seconds ahead, of course. I do love that. And I'm not you, Eric, but I often get people like, well, when I do my end of season driver of the year things, who was your driver of the season sort of thing, and it's like, well, surely driver of the season is a driver who finished first in the championship. Be like, yes, but you know what we mean. Not you, Eric. It just reminds me of that. It's always a giggle. Torpedo of the day was Checo, says CPB1. Moray says try and get Russell back. I assume that's to Williams. He seems fed up at Mercedes. Never going to happen. He's got a better chance of winning in that than a Williams, and he is very much the guy to replace Hamilton in their eyes, isn't he? So if and when he will retire, but when he retires, Piastri is a goat rookie hands down. Norris needs team orders to beat him, says Rue. The zero line, he's a new Fiat, obviously referring to Perez there. Who else we got? Piastri also showing the way of the rookie, says Max. Hamilton did a tad better as a rookie than Piastri, says the zero line. Just a tad, yes. Mr. Andre Ferrez is a bit late, but definitely not McLaren's first all podium since 2014. Yeah, I've corrected that one. I should have checked it, and I apologise then, so I'll apologise again. You're going to hear this twice now. We're in the future. We could tell you anything now. We could tell you anything. But yes, that's been sorted. I've gone over that one. Oscar deserved it. It was awesome, but Max at the start. Oh my God. Yeah, fair enough. And let's do 2 more. Norris for Mark, and let's see, one more. I'm just trying to say somebody that's left field, but not just stuff. I think basically the chat is split, I would say. Not evenly. It seems to be leaning towards Piastri, but I would say chat is split between Verstappen, Norris, and Piastri. And like I say, if it's... I don't know. I'm not comfortable with my pick. I'm picking Piastri because he got his maiden podium, but that comment from Henry about the 3/10 makes me lean towards Norris. But then there was also a very good point about, do you know what? Driver of the day, the podium. They were all bloody excellent. There you go. Yeah. Cop out. I don't often cop out. I'll always try and pick one, but it's a tough pick. But I think some good drives out there today, and I'll go with Zhou. Why not? There you go. Covers me. If you have any questions, please do let me know in the chat. We'll do some Q&A for sort of 15 minutes, I think, or so 15, 20 minutes, and then we'll wrap up for today. I'll let those in the middle of the night go and get some sleep, and let those who want to go and lay on the sofa all day, then I will do. I love a cop-out, Steph. I can't help it. Please do leave a like as well, by the way. 124 likes, thank you so much for that. 377 still here. Please do leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe as well, so you don't miss out on any future content. Lots to come. Looking forward to quite a when I look at it, looks like quite a drastic change for 2024, but actually it's not. It's going back to what the channel should be. So it's kind of like it's a change, but it's really a revert. A revert to the last time everything worked, which could be quite fun. So yes, looking forward to that one. Lando was like 1 second lap faster than Oscar, says Kerbal. Yeah, no, I'm like I say, it's Piastri because he got his first podium and drove really well. But then you look at the Norris numbers and you look at what I think Henry said, you could easily give it to Norris. But then others have made the point that Verstappen was faultless all weekend, and whilst Norris and Piastri did a great job, that's where their pace was this weekend, whereas Verstappen was just a step up on everybody. So it's difficult. That's why I'm sort of I'm saying the podium, even though it's a cop-out, because I could quite happily, if I could have 3 votes in the Driver of the Day poll, which I suppose I could have created multiple accounts, but whatever, I would vote for all 3 of them because I think they're all excellent today. So that's why I'm going to pick Perez. Hi, Sean. I put this in chat earlier, but do you think there's a chance Red Bull struggle in Las Vegas similarly to Singapore, says Moss GTR? Honest answer, I don't know. I don't know enough about the Vegas track. I've not had a proper look at it yet because we've got a few races before we get there, so I tend to do that sort of the couple of weeks before. But it's one thing that somebody did say on Twitter, actually, to me. They atted me, as the kids would say. Dan Sickles says that gave me the temperatures for the last 5 years at 9:56 p.m. in Vegas on November 18th. 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Apologies, it's Fahrenheit. Americans are loving this. Everyone else is going, what? But 50 degrees Fahrenheit in 22, 56 in 21, 2020 was 65, 2019 was 60, and 2018 was 52. And he's saying that there's no way the tyres are going to switch on. It'll be like driving on ice. So that could be one of the variables that we see in Vegas if those temperatures. I'm not saying he's lying, but if those temperatures are true, then it's going to be cool. Very, very cool. So isn't 50 Fahrenheit about 10 C? 10 degrees? I'm going to check now. Fahrenheit to Celsius. Or Celsius to Fahrenheit, because that's the one I use for my thingy, because I can't be bothered to do maths. Yeah, 10 degrees. So it's 10 degrees C. So it's going to be very chilly. So that could be quite interesting. So I don't know if it's specific to Red Bull, but it's certainly something to keep an eye on for the weekend. So I can't really say for sure, but I've given you a different answer to your question because that's just what I do. But yeah, like Random says, think Turkey 2020. It was a bit chaos, so we'll see. But also you've got the long run down the straight. You've got some very fast corners. It's actually, if you've driven it on the game, it's actually quite a nice track to drive. I've done it a couple of times, except for that twisty middle bit around the big sphere thing. It's not a nice couple of corners. That's a classic street track. We need to get back this way somehow. How are we going to do it? Let's do it like this. That'll do. Think Singapore Sling, which by the way I really missed last weekend. I love that corner. But yeah, so it could be interesting. Cold for that one for the weekend. Is this one of the best rookie seasons in modern F1 history in terms of Oscar? And will Max ever win every race for the rest of the season, or will I'll try again. Or will he lose at least one more race? Says CPB. So, I don't think Max will win every race for the end of the season. I think Red Bull could. I think Perez might get one, but I don't think Max will, because you've got, as I say, we're already umming and ahhing about Vegas. You've got the lottery of Interlagos. Mexico can be a bit of a leveler, can't it? At times, it can also be dominated. We've seen it, but it can level out at Mexico. Looking at the tracks coming up, Qatar's a bit of a variable. I've only been there once. I think Kota, Abu Dhabi are pretty much nailed on, I would say. Qatar, you could probably argue the same, but again, it's a bit variable there. I think they'll probably win. We've got 6 left. I'm going to say they'll win 5 of them between them. Probably all Verstappen, but I'll say 5 of them. With a bit of chaos in Brazil, maybe. Something like that. Or Vegas will be crackers. That's what I go with there. That's my prediction for the rest of the season. But in terms of Piastri, it's a good first season for Piastri. People, I think, fairly rave about Lando Norris. So to get in the car and to be as close, he's not close, but as close as he is to him, I think he should take a lot of pride in that. I think he's had a great season. I really like Piastri. I like the way he drives, I like the way he handles himself away from the track as well as on it. I think he's a really good driver. But I think when you look at debut seasons like Lewis Hamilton, Jacques Villeneuve, I know you said in modern times, but when you look at those debut seasons where drivers have nearly won championships, it's hard to say it's one of the best. But in terms of modern times, I mean, what have we had really in terms of rookie seasons lately that have been any good? So I suppose you could say, if we're talking the last sort of 10 years, I don't mean 10 years, is it? You got, yeah, probably. If you look at the sort of last 5 to 10 years, you could argue, but I think overall, no. But interesting. That's an interesting question, though, isn't it? Where would it rank? I'm just trying to think who the rookies have been in recent years, but I can't think off the top of my head. We did have Verstappen, but I mean, he was in a Toro Rosso, so it wasn't a great rookie year, but he had a pretty good first year at Red Bull, to be fair, or first half or 2/3 of a year at Red Bull. So, yeah. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm umming at, the one and only. You've got to think about Verstappen's first season, but I'm trying. I don't want to go through Wikipedia. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I think he was strong, and that's what helped him get in that Red Bull with Fiat's issues. Had that Toro Rosso been on the pace of the McLaren now, what would he have achieved? We'll never know, obviously, but statistically, it's probably right up there. But in the last 10 years, but it's tough. It's a tough one to call. I'm not sure, but I think it's one of the best we've seen in certainly the last few years. I'm trying to think of who's had great rookie seasons in the last few years. Leclerc had a good rookie season at Alfa Romeo, didn't he? That's a good shout. Charles Leclerc. Lawson's done very well in his 4 races. I mean, yeah. Russell's rookie season wasn't bad, was it? But again, difficult to tell. It's just, yeah, it's difficult to kind of, you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to word it the right way, and I can't think of what I'm trying to say, and I'm going to move on because otherwise we start. Yeah, Nikita Mazepin, there you go. Leclerc was great in that Sauber, the Alfa Romeo Sauber, and that was the year, wasn't it? Where, because it was his year at the team, but it was that year where every single time they went to Leclerc, or it felt like every single time they went to Leclerc, he was fighting with Alonso. Like, there's always something going on between those two, and I really enjoyed that one. No F1 in India, but India does have MotoGP. Did they get their visa sorted for MotoGP? I was reading about that. A bit of a mess there, wasn't there? But I would like to see F1 back at that circuit because I really like that circuit. I thought it was a good one. Shame we got that, and Sepang, obviously, say it every time. It will be nice, and Kailami as well. Going to race in South Africa. That'd be cool. Yeah. Any other questions? Happy to answer anything F1 related or related to the race. Anything I've missed that you want me to mention before we round off for today. Still no press release from Alfa Romeo, so I can't say what Joe said because I'm intrigued by what he said more than anything. I might do. I was going to, funny, genuinely, not just saying this to cop out, genuinely. Random says Dream F1 calendar. I was thinking about doing that over the winter, doing my Dream F1 calendar, either in a stream or a video. So I'll remember that one and keep that on my list of ideas because I think that could be quite fun. Definitely. Asked at the start, who do you think has cost their respective team more? Stroll with points or Logan with crash costs? Both have hurt their team, says Warden. You did. Yes, I said I'd come back to that, didn't I? So, is my official answer to that one. But I don't know what the crash costs are for Sargent, but given the gap in prize money between each position in the championship, it'd be quite easy to argue Stroll. But I was thinking about this yesterday, not about the financial side of it, but what Stroll has cost Aston Martin this season. And I think I said it last week as well. It's kind of difficult to work out because McLaren have come on so strong that even if Stroll was consistently scoring, they may have had a shot at catching him anyway. And Mercedes and Ferrari probably would have been it'd be closer than it is. Absolutely would be closer than it is, but I think Ferrari and Mercedes would probably have got them anyway. But I think the McLaren one would have been tougher to see happening. But it sort of depends on what you think Stroll could have done on points or should have done on points in that second car, because Alonso's in the first car, so he's gonna. I've said it today. He's done a great job over the last few races in that car. So in fact, look, I think Stroll has a chance of not even making the top 10 in a car. In fact, yeah, he has in a car that was mega at the start of the season. I mean, Alonso's got 174 points. Stroll's picked up 47. Even if you stick another 100 on Stroll, you put another 100 on Stroll, and they are 3-2-1, but you'd still, which would be very, very nice, by the way. But Mercedes aren't far off, and Ferrari aren't far off. So I think they'd be top 4, definitely be top 4 without Stroll, possibly top 3, depending on what Ferrari do on strategy. But I don't think McLaren would have caught them if Stroll was performing better and picking up more consistent points. But I think this has been, for me, and I know he's up against a hell of a driver, but for me, this has been possibly Lance Stroll's most disappointing season. For me, a lot of you say he's been disappointing since day one. I don't think he has been. I think he's had some very strong seasons, given the cars that he's driven, but I think this has been his most disappointing. And also the fact that the team boss, Mike Crack, is quite happy to come out and say there is no real gap between Alonso and Stroll in performance is laughable and reeks of, you will not say bad words about my son. I'm not saying that is what's happening, but that's what it stinks like, because Mike Crack should be able to say Alonso is head and shoulders clear of Lance Stroll this season. He needs to do better next year, but he's not saying that. But he would do if he had Esteban Ocon in that second car or Oscar Piastri in that second car. So it's a bit annoying. Red Raven makes a fair point. Says, keep in mind the team also pay for every point scored. He may have actually saved them money. Or yeah, he's also paying for the seat as well, isn't he? Effectively, so I suppose technically saving money, but no, it's I don't know. Disappointed in Stroll this season. Like I say, I think for me is most disappointing. The Zero Line says you're basically just trying to will them to fire Stroll. I don't want to. No, not to fire him. What I want to hear from a team principal is the truth when it comes to a driver. You know, Christian Horner's been very defensive of Sergio Perez, but he acknowledges that he needs to step it up. I don't want to read when Alonso's on 170 odd points and Stroll's on 47 points with the car that they have for the first half of the season that there's no noticeable performance gap, because that is, whilst I appreciate they have more data than we do, looking at the numbers, looking at how the races unfold, that just stinks of bullshit. Do you know what I mean? It's not that I want them to fire him. I want them to be honest about it and just say, look, Lance hasn't been good enough this season. He needs to step it up. He may have cost us a place in the championship. Light a fire under his arse. Give him a kick up the backside. That's what he needs. Some drivers respond to that, some don't. And if Stroll doesn't respond to that, then maybe they need to look at making a change for 25. But he might respond to that. But telling somebody who's doing something, who isn't doing well, that they're doing well, isn't encouraging them to improve. You're not helping that driver at all. So he'll now go into next season saying, well, my boss says and my dad says I did all right, so that's fine. Whereas if you tell him that he's not, I mean, what's said publicly and what's said behind closed doors could be very different. As far as we know, everything's rosy and the team are happy with him. But it may well be that even his dad has sat him down and said, look, this isn't good enough. You need to step it up. We'll give you next year, because Mike Crack's already confirmed that. However, if you cost us again next year and you're not performing, we will have to replace you. Because there comes a point where he has to put aside, or he should, with the ambitions he's got, if he wants to win championships. I've said this before. If he wants to win championships, Lawrence Stroll, there comes a point where he has to say, this isn't good enough, Lance. Step it up. If you don't, we have to find somebody else. That's my view on that. And it might not happen. I've said it before. I'm not a dad. If I was, and I could afford to buy my son or my daughter a Formula One team to race in, I probably would keep them there forever. Because you always want to do your best for your kids, don't you? I get that. But, with the ambitions of championships, not good enough this. And it's not good enough from Lance. And I appreciate the start of the year he was injured. But again, I said it the other week, I think he was driving better at the start of the year while he was recovering than he is now. So, yeah. And I know the car was better, but There you go. Yeah, could even be Lance that decides to leave. Could be. Two more questions then, and then we'll wrap it up for today. But it's. I don't want Lance to be fired because that's not how I look at this. I don't look at a driver you've got to go. Like Logan Sargent, I fear for him, but I don't want him to go. I want him to prove himself. I want him to deliver. I want him to turn this around. For me, I see a lot more interest in the story from my point of view of a driver who's had a bad season, who then comes back next year and turns it around, than sacking that driver and then bringing somebody else in. I think that's much more interesting as a narrative, but that's just me. Everyone's different. There'll be lots of you going, no, sack him, get rid of him. He's crap. Stroll don't want it like real drivers do, like he's good driver but no passion, says Wicked Wild and Wise. I saw somebody else say that the other day on Twitter, actually. I think it was Twitter, it might be somewhere else. It doesn't matter, but I saw somebody say it. So, yeah, I think that's fair. Vesk says, I was just thinking, why doesn't F1 bring only the softest tyres? Wouldn't it make the strategy more interesting? I think Pirelli would hate that because obviously they don't want... It'd be great for us, but I don't think they want, from a brand's point of view, there'll be lots of other reasons, but from a brand's point of view, they don't want the tyres exploding. You know, you bring the softest tyre to Silverstone, for example. Wow. That's a lot of exploding tyres. That's a lot of chaos. It doesn't look good on them because they weren't keen, were they, back in sort of 2010, 11, 12 when the tyres would degrade after about 3 minutes. There'd be like 4 or 5 pit stops a race. It was great to watch the chaos and the drama that came with it and the comeback drives and all of that. But from a Pirelli point of view, it's not great for a brand. So I don't think they fancy that one. But I am always going to be a fan, though, I will say, of skipping a compound. So, for example, this weekend we have the C1, the C2 and the C3. I think it'd be amazing if they'd gone C1, C2, C4. Yes, you've effectively only got a qualifying tyre then because no one's going to use it in the race. But, you know, a Kevin Magnussen with 3 laps to go comes in and sticks the softest tyre on, sets fastest up. He might not get a point, but it's something. So I love that when they do that. They've done it a couple of times and it's worked quite well. But, yeah, there's probably a reason why. There's probably a reason why they don't do it, but yeah, that's my view on that one. Stefan says, feel like a lot of jeopardy in F1 has disappeared. Think reliability. I watched for some reason, Stefan, I don't know why. I watched the Monaco Grand Prix 96 highlights on Thursday, I think it was. After I got my preview out, I just sat down and came up on YouTube. I think it was recommended that I watch them. And Damon Hill was pretty much cruising to that win, wasn't he? And nowadays, I'm not saying that I want this to happen to Max, but just on the jeopardy point, Max is cruising out front today, 20 seconds up the road. Back in 1996, that's not a guaranteed finish, is it? That engine could blow up. And of course his power unit could go pop, but it's less likely to happen now than it did back then. So there was always that jeopardy, and I agree. I think the power units we have now are incredible engineering, incredible design that they last so long. But equally, I do kind of miss, not so much when my favourite drivers out front winning, but I do miss that fear that the camera's going to flick to fire and plumes of smoke flying out the back of the car because the V10's just suddenly gone. A brand new V10 in the car this morning has just gone pop out of nowhere. I agree. It does remove the jeopardy and do you remember, just on tyres, it's just come to me randomly. Do you remember when they didn't change tyres in the race? They banned it. You had to use one set of tyres for an entire race. And you couldn't change tyres unless they were damaged, obviously. And it was just you come in and refuel and off you go again. That was bizarre. Very, very bizarre. I don't have a local CPB. I go anywhere they've got an offer on usually. that kind of cheapskate, to be fair. Vesk says, when was that? It was early somebody will say a year. Red Raven might remember. I'm not saying he's old, but I just might remember. I might give him the year, but I think it was early 2000s. I believe. 2005. A few people, Stefan random. Andras saying 2005. Mike says 2005. And C64 says 2005 as well. So that's when they did that. And it was just bizarre. It just didn't make it weird. Probably a cost-saving thing. I don't know, but very, very odd. Yeah, Indygate, good point, yeah. I know you're not. One more question then, and then I am going to finish up for today because I'm going to go get a coffee. I made the point in the comments to the preview on Thursday. I love the early races because I like getting up. I'm not a morning person, but I like getting up, watching the race, and then having the rest of my day and the rest of my weekend to relax and have some fun. Reality is, what will happen after this is I'll go get a drink, let the stream process, do my timestamps, put it out, go get a drink, sit on the sofa, pop the telly on for 5 minutes, and then wake up 4 hours later, because that's usually what happens. So it's no different really to a normal weekend for me. So the evening ones are a lot of fun as well. Looking forward to that run-in of USA, Brazil, Mexico, not in that order, of course. What time's Qatar on? Is that more normal? No, that's an evening one as well. So it's all evening races now until... it is, yeah, all evening races now until... what's it called? Abu Dhabi. Because because Vegas is an evening one as well, isn't it? Oh, I just realised that. So no normal times for Europeans. I know non-Europeans. Oh, your heart bleeds. No, sorry, that's a lie. Not Vegas. Yeah, Vegas is an early one. So no usual European afternoon times is what I'm saying. But yeah, most of them evening. And then you've got early for Vegas, and then normal time for Abu Dhabi. So yeah. I like a morning race and afternoon one, definitely. Do you watch rugby? I do not, Justin, no. I have no idea. I don't know enough about rugby to comment, really. I watched the football last night. Got a win, which was nice, but, oh dear, are we in a mess. Who do you want to buy the Enstone team? Let's do this one from Rev Raven. Who do you want to buy the Enstone team? Tired of Alpine. Frankly, I fancy a rebrand of Dacia or Opel, Vauxhall or Tesla. We need another insane billionaire in the sport. Thank you, Red Raven. That'll be probably the final question. I spot something amazingly, sensibly, but also slightly crazy in the chat. Sensible or crazy, whichever. But I like that question. So, just for anyone who doesn't know, I think the FIA have rejected 3 of the 4 new team proposals. I think was what I read. I'm just double check on the motorsport thing, but I think that's what the story is. And it sounds like they're just going with Andretti, but there are, and they're kind of wild rumors. I don't know how true they are. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody's had a cheeky hand in them, but the talk is that maybe if the teams won't allow a new team, that there could be the possibility of an Andretti Alpine Renault tie-in. I'd like an 11th team on the grid. If Andretti can't get on, I'd quite like them to buy Alpine. They've already kind of got a deal in place, haven't they, with Renault to supply them with power units, so that solves that issue. You just call them Andretti Renault. Renault keep their name in the sport. They keep the power unit in the sport. They get to do what they want to do with that. They don't have to run the team. Andretti, Ryan Reynolds and co. At Alpine, Andretti Renault. I quite like that idea. So if not that, then honestly, I just prefer them to be called Renault. I understand why they've gone with the branding of their cars, their brand with Alpine, but I'd just rather they were Renault. And if they can't be Renault, they just call themselves Benetton. From a nostalgic point of view. But the idea of a Tesla, for example, I can't see that happening because obviously Tesla, that's all electric, isn't it? Yeah, right. Which one is it? Is it Reynolds or Gosling? I thought it was Reynolds, Ryan Reynolds, who bought into Alpine. But yeah, I don't think Tesla will ever come in, but it would be cool to see a new brand in there. But I just Renault would be fine for me. But I'd like Andretti if they can't get a team in. But I want an 11th and a 12th team on the grid. So long as they bring value to the sport, so long as they're not mobile chicanes like an HRT, for example, totally fine with that. And the more seats, the better. The trouble is, and we always say, don't we, on these streams very quickly, we always say things like, oh, we could just do with a couple more seats to get these youngsters in. But if we have 4 more seats, we're still going to want a couple more because there's still going to be a driver out there that somebody thinks has earned a place in F1 that won't get a chance. It's a circle we could keep going round in. We could keep going on about we need another 2 seats, but we can't have a 300 car grid. So, well, do you know what, we could. Good God, imagine that. Martin would have to change his phrase. 25 into 1 doesn't go. There you go. So, but I wouldn't mind 12. I wouldn't mind 12. But so long as they're, like I said, so long as they're not mobile chicanes, they need to be teams that can sustain themselves financially. They need to be teams that can bring something to the sport. And as I said it, I feel like I said it 100 times. Andretti to me is about as safe a bet as you're going to get, and I'm surprised there's such a kickoff about it. But yeah, it's Reynolds, is it? Ryan Reynolds. I thought it was. As for the just very quickly, as for the AlphaTauri name, good people speculating on that one. It might have been on Sky. It might be something I read on Twitter from a Chris Medland, for example, not him specifically, but a journalist. But apparently, this Hugo Boss Adidas thing isn't a naming thing. Apparently, it sounds as though it's more to do with them just being sponsors of the team, and actually Red Bull are going to go with a name that's closer to their drinks brand. So they're not going. They've already said no to Toro Rosso. They're not going to go with AlphaTauri, but I don't know. Red Bull sugar free. I don't know if that's the thing they could do, or I don't know, whatever. But that's kind of that was the last I heard of it. So I don't know whether we are going to get a Hugo Bosso, which is a shame. I'm not a big fan of the beads. Just a last point, I promise. CPB1 says, I just want their crap BWT livery to vanish forever. If you're going to do a BWT livery, just go full in like Racing Point and Force India did. That's fine. That's fine. That's what I go with. If I'm picking names for AlphaTauri, it's Toro Rosso all day long. I think that not genius branding because it's just Red Bull. You know, it's Bull Red, whatever. But I thought it was a clever play, and I think honouring that Italian heritage at the team whilst keeping it close to Red Bull. That gorgeous blue and red livery they had in their latter years as Toro Rosso. Oh, what I loved that, but they're not going to do that. So there you go. Let's finish off then, because it's I will sit here literally until 8 o'clock tonight talking to you all if I could. But I think that would drive everyone crazy, including me. And I'm already going slightly crazy because we've been going nearly 2 hours. So much for 90 minutes, Sean. I'm very good at this. That is it. For the Japanese Grand Prix race reaction. Again, I really enjoyed that one. I think you guys seem to do, actually. I think I agree with this poll, by the way. I forgot to close it last week. 48% rate the race as good. 31% say average, which I put down as okay. Not good, not bad, just okay. 17% great, 2% bad. I don't agree that it was bad. I don't think it was great, but I think it was a good or very good race. So I'm glad I wasn't going mad. Sometimes I watch a race and I go, oh, that was so good. And then I come to you guys in chat and you're going, that was the worst thing I've ever watched. And I'm like, oh, I actually really enjoyed it. But anyway, so I'm glad we agree on that one. So a good one. But yes, I am wrapping up. I'm going to go. That's it. I'm done. That is it for this one. I will be back, like I say, hopefully something this coming week. Definitely back, of course, for Qatar. Preview on the Thursday. I'll try and make sure I do the quali waffle as well on the Saturday that week because we missed it this week. And, of course, the race reaction as well. Later that evening. It'll be a later one, so that should be a lot of fun. Don't forget to follow me on social media as well. Links in the description. Follow XPB Images too over there on the old Twitter sphere and Instagram. Please do drop a like as well. We've got 151 likes, 326 still here. Let's see if we can get that to 175. That'd be amazing. That'd be fantastic. So please do drop a like. Don't forget to subscribe as well so you don't miss out on any future videos or, of course, these waffly, nonsense, brilliant, so much fun, drive people crazy live streams. There you go. I'm off to go and fall asleep on the sofa once I finish what I'm doing here. So thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.